job that we've got to tackle is the components I mentioned before, F13 and 14, which are the two parts that join onto the spinner. These need a little bit of special treatment and special blending. But before you do that, you've got to make sure with the needle file that you've done the same process, you've gone through all the notches and make sure that each one of the stringers will go in every one of the notches. And what you also want to do is make sure that the lock nut will rotate freely in both of the components. The other thing we need to be sure of is to make sure we need to know what's the top and what's the bottom of the components. If you look at these two components, you'll see that there's a little notch in both of them, and that identifies what's the top. And what we need to do is line up the top notch with the top notch there. Right, if you see this assembly here, what we've got to do is remove the steps on the edge and actually blend the edges of the component so they blend into the shape of the spinner. As we can see in this diagram here, the components are cut square and the eyes will focus in on the bullet shape of the spinner. So we've got to spend particular care and attention on this area. And what we're looking to do is to remove this small step. It's just a case of blending it in, but it is important to notice that the shape on the top of the Spitfire is different to the shape underneath the engine. There's a slightly steeper angle here, so there's a little bit more material to be removed. Okay, the next job we've got to do is we've got to join these two parts together, making sure that the notch goes to the top. And what we do, we get the locking nut and put it on the bottom, and we apply a small amount of super glue on the end of a pin to that face, making sure that we don't put so much on. When the other part goes on, it squeezes onto the nut. So we put the two parts together, carefully lining up the top two notches, and then push it together, and then rotate the nut just to make sure it doesn't lock, and just give it 30 seconds until it dries. Okay, the next job is to try and mount this glued assembly onto the spinner, ready for filing. And to try and protect the spinner, we want to put a little gap in between it so the file doesn't catch the spinner and scratch it before you do any polishing. So what we'll do, just put a small washer or spacer or something just to put a bit of distance between the two, and then tighten up the spinner until it locks. Okay, when this is all locked up, you'll probably find that the lock nut and the F13 and 14 can still move slightly because of the size of the step on the bush. Now, originally in the manual I had recommended some paper hole spacers just to put on here to try and tighten this up during the filing operation. But one of the builders has recommended using a bit of the string, splitting it down into its separate strands and giving it a few wraps round the nut, and then tighten it up. You can use take the corners off that, using it into there as a Tommy bar, and tighten up. Then it should all be secure. Right, we've got the full assembly mounted in the vise, and what we want to do is just a little bit extra precaution to protect the spinner, is just stick a little bit of tape over the top there, just so the file doesn't scratch it. And again, the technique, just to blend, the technique is to try and roll up and down like that, just to take the steps away. Just take your time and don't rush it. and work your way all the way around. As I said before, the angle on the bottom edge is different to the angle on the top edge, and when you've completed that all the way around, that's the way the component should look. You can see the angle on the top is slightly different to the bottom. It's just a case of blending it out. As I mentioned, that diameter on the component is accurate, and that smaller diameter is the diameter of the spinner. So you're just blending it till the steps disappear. This is the packet that the propeller blades come in, and when you look at them, the blades are already pre-formed. They've already got the shape on them. They've still got the bars, the same as the rest of the components, which you'll have to clean the edges and take that bar off and do the polishing of them, but the hard work's already been taken care of. This is how you get the spinner. It's already fully machined with the slots and everything, but when you get the parts out and you're ready to do some polishing on the spinner, you'll notice that you might get some lines appearing around the shape. These need to be polished out. It doesn't take that long, but you just have to need to work away at it to get them to removed. But any time that you spend on the spinner is going to be well worth it, because that's where the eyes focus in, and you just have to keep working away at it with the wet and dry until those scratches have been removed, because it's one area that you really do want it to be a mirror finish. And they're starting to disappear now over that section. See, they're just about gone on that section, but you'll have to work your way all the way around the spinner to remove them, and then you'll work on with this finer and finer emery on the polish, because you really want the spinner to be a mirror finish. And when you get the propeller blade out of the packet, they'll still have the bars and everything on, and you'll probably find it's just a slightly tight fit to go in. But what you do, you clean it all up and polish it ready for assembly, all the parts. Now the important part to remember on the propeller blade is that part of the propeller there must be removed. That face must be totally flush, otherwise a full propeller won't be able to spin on components 13 and 14. If you choose to use the multi-tool method, you can stick on a cutting blade, glue all the parts together, and then just trim them in situ. And just work very gently until it's gone down to the same level. It is important to wear glasses when you're using this type of equipment. It doesn't really matter how far below you take it, but it must be below. And that's just about there now. This face actually won't be seen when the finished component goes on and turns round. And you do the same operation with the other two blades.